Wellness is a practice, not just a word.
Welcome to the Synergy Podcast, where myself, Kelly Engelman, and Lori Essery shed light on powerful tools and topics that nourish your body.
And most importantly, feed your soul.
Welcome to the Synergy Podcast. We are so excited you're back with us today, where we believe we're stronger together. And today we are super blessed to have the co-director of Hippocrates Wellness Institute with us, sharing his wealth of knowledge.
So a little bit about Brian. Brian is the director of the internationally renowned Hippocrates Wellness Center located in West Palm Beach, Florida. It's the world's leading center for working with affliction and reversing premature aging, and is frequented by the likes of Sir Anthony Hopkins, Elliot Page, Mick Fleetwood, and Elle McPherson. For over 50 years, Brian's limitless love and passion to mentor and guide hundreds of thousands of lives into a semblance of balance and well-being have led to countless hours of practical and clinical experience, positioning him as one of the world's leading progressive thinkers and teachers. We are so excited to have him today. Let's get started with today's episode.
Hi, Synergy listeners. We are so excited to be back together with you today in production. We are delighted to have Hippocrates Wellness Institute on with us today, where we're going to talk to Brian Clement, the co-director of Hippocrates. We are going to pick his brain all kind of ways about food. You know, food is medicine. We believe that. And we want to dig in and kind of teach you guys some new or exciting or intriguing ways to boost your nutrition status. So Brian, tell us your story. How did you get to Hippocrates?
Way back in the 1960s, I was a pioneer in American obesity. I was one of the few very fat people you saw running around. And thank goodness an older woman in her 70s at that point, who had reversed cancer naturally, smacked me in the back of the head. She was bold and said, "You're going to die. You can't even walk upstairs without stopping." Now, the 3 packs of cigarettes and the joints I was putting on both sides of my mouth didn't help either. And in one fell swoop, she said something I never heard from my loving, wonderful parents. I had great parents and grandparents and family. She said, "You've got to eat correctly. You've got to eat vegetables." Now, the only vegetables I saw in my house, on rare occasions, we'd have like butter with green stuff floating in it. That was rare. And usually it was white potatoes, since we're Irish. And so that had much butter on. You know, every single meal, my 2 brothers and I would get a quarter of a pound of, you remember the square quarter of a pound butter? They'd put it in the spuds and it would melt, and then you'd put the white bread and dip the gravy, and that was the best thing I ate, by the way. Everything else.
Oh, goodness.
Wow.
God knows what. So I obviously need it. So in one fell swoop, I became a plant-based eater before people knew what a vegan was or a vegetarian was or the organic was. And this woman guided me, thank God. And I lost in 18 months, 120 pounds.
Wow.
And she then said to me, "You know, Brian, you've got to do this work." Now, I was already at university in biochemistry and science. And I said, "Well, where do you learn this?" She said, "You have to learn it. We're going to go to the experts." So there, even today, sadly, 53 years later, there's still not a formal school in North America now. Harvard, Yale, Loma Linda, we've created one in Europe, and we can speak about that later. We can get master's and doctorate degrees in lifestyle medicine. And so once I fully engaged in this, and in 1970, I was just new at it and very young. I did my first lecture. Thank God you weren't in the audience, because I didn't know much. But I knew more than the people in the audience, thank God. I was out lecturing all over America, and by 1975, I asked an important question: who has the most experience? Who has the most success? And everyone said it was Hippocrates, which started in 1956. So we were the founders of the alternative health movement. We were the founders of self-care. We were the founders of lifestyle medicine. These are the words that came out of Hippocrates. Because our founder, I wasn't there obviously, but our founder was told in 1952, Ann Wigmore, by the Harvard doctors in Boston, she had 90 days to live. So she went home and ate the way peasants did in Europe, which were plants, healed it, and in 1956 recognized that what was lacking in healthcare was self-care, and opened the doors of the very first center like this on the planet. And so we've been going consecutively now. Soon, 3 years, it will be our 70th anniversary. We've had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people come through. Our reputation comes from people healing catastrophic disease. And those of us that live this way, I'm well into my 70s now, we just don't age the way the rest of the population does.
Brian, you said, healthcare, what was lacking in healthcare was self-care. And that was back in the 50s, right? Yeah. And so as I've experienced medicine for the last 30 years as a provider, I've seen that. Like, it is so blaringly in my face on a daily basis. Like, our culture has lost the art of self-care. I had no idea that it went back to the 50s, right? I thought that was something we invented in the 80s and 90s, but you're telling me even from the 50s that it was recognized.
There was more humanity, let's be honest. When I was young, the doctor was a respected human being. They came to your house. We really loved them. I know they cared for us. They were part of our family. And I was interviewing a doctor who's my age about 2 years ago. He really summed it up in a way nobody had ever done so, for me at least. He said, we had freedom. We went to school years, 12 years. We were educated. They gave us the freedom to help people the way we wanted. And then, before you know it, they created rules and standard of practice. And insurance clerks told us what we could give a patient or not. And the heart and soul in the 70s and 80s, as you pointed out rightly, happened. And it was a switch. But I still think that women like you and men who get into healthcare and become doctors and nurse practitioners and PAs do it for the right reason. When I was young, I used to be angry at the doctor improperly. I don't know any that I've met. I know 2,000 by name that did it for the wrong reason, or to just make money or to be greedy. But when you're educated by a broken system that has one objective, to sell pills to you, then you lose your heart and soul sometimes if that's the participation you're involved in. And today, thank God for people like you and doctors all over the world that are moving rapidly into this area, integrative healthcare and alternative healthcare and holistic healthcare, that they understand that it's not just about pills and it's not just about genetics, it's about epigenetics. And everywhere in the world they know that, and they do research on it, except here where they keep having the old broken record, and that's why the healthcare system's broken.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely agree, and we can all agree today, is that our healthcare system is broken. And I love what you just said about believing that we got into it because we genuinely care for people. I too don't know anybody who would sacrifice years and years and years of education and finances to get that education to not care. But unfortunately, the fee-for-service care model, in addition to who drives our algorithms and our decisions, basically they say, take care of the patient, but we're going to hold your hands behind your back and blindfold you and see how you do it. So it does take a lot of, I would say, not only energy, audacity, broad shoulders, courage, yes, courage, to swim upstream and to do things differently. But Kelly and I, as you had said, and we're so grateful for the last, several years, I would say 30 years cumulatively, 17 years for me, and actually a little bit more than 30 years cumulatively, but doing things differently and truly loving, we call it fun medicine, right? Because it's definitely medicine that makes a difference, and it's using tools in our toolbox that are food, like you said. And I also love what you said, is it's not just food. It's nourishing your heart, nourishing your soul, nourishing your body through lifestyle, exercise, movement, breath work, all of those things. So love it, love doing it.
Yeah, but I mean, the reality quite simply is the data is in. The number 3 killer in the United States, Canada, and most of Western Europe is pharmaceutical medicine. Now, how can we allow this system to keep working? And I'll give a story. Back in 1978, the most blessed day of my life came, April the 17th, when I was in Stockholm, Sweden, and met my future wife. And she was running Europe, the world's most famous center on inflammatory disease. She was the director there. And
So
when I got
time
to
out,
know
Brian. You said what year was that?
1978.
So 1978. So we didn't have headlines for inflammation in the U.S. until the 90s.
Not at all.
Right? We didn't connect the dot of inflammation as the primary driver for disease until.
This is the difference between systems that have to do the right thing because they're giving it to everyone, and systems that have to profit, no matter if it's the right thing or not. So when I found out that this center, people were flying from the United States to go there, all over the world, Asia, that for Swedish citizens in Sweden, it was free to go there. And that was stunning to me because we were battling at that point not against only the allopathic field, but the government, which supported it in the pharmaceuticals. And I wasn't the battler. I'm loving when it comes to that, but they were battling with us. There they went in and they said, let's do some research. And they found out they were getting a 93% reversal rate on inflammatory diseases they worked with. So the next day, not the next month or year, they started to pay for Swedish citizens to go. In 1982, I talked to one of the government officials and said, why do you do that? He said, yes, we're nice people in Sweden and we do care for fellow Swedes, but it's purely economic. So that's what really doesn't make sense. So what the work you're doing, the work we've done here for nearly 70 years, where we reverse diseases, we don't reverse it, but we give tools and people reverse diseases. Do you know how many trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars globally that would save a year? The gross national product of the United States, very soon, 25% will be healthcare that doesn't work in practically any case. How does that work? It doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
So let's talk about what does work, right?
Yeah.
Nutrition,
Yes.
Food is medicine.
Yes.
So I'm fascinated. Lori and I had the opportunity to come on site at Hippocrates, and I'll have to tell you, it's been a dream of ours we've been talking about it for over 10 years. And
Wow.
we just never carved out the time and the space to experience that for ourselves. So we've had the opportunity to be on property twice recently. Walking into the lunchroom smells like chlorophyll.
Yeah.
You can just breathe in the air and get well. Just you don't even have to eat it. Just stand there and breathe the chlorophyll. So help us understand that. Tell us about it.
Well, this is an interesting thing. So when I was just a youngster, of course, I was working off the biochemistry and the physics and the biology I learned. And then I started to realize, probably my early 30s, I have got to study natural history, quantum biology, quantum physics. And when I did that, it was overwhelmingly simple for me and everyone else, if you do this, to figure out what we should eat. So right now, as we're sitting here talking, in the very center of the sun, endless zillions, and that's not an embellishment, endless zillions of protons are born. And they immediately start banging back and forth on neutrons. And so when you walk out where you're living and I'm living, you can feel that friction coming down in the form of sun waves. But now listen to this part of the story. It's amazing. This happens for 100,000 years in this star we call the sun. It's a star. And bouncing back and forth, 100,000 years, it works its way very, very slowly towards the surface of this gastric sun. Remember, the sun is 98% gastric, 2% particle. And then it shoots off so rapidly. Listen to this one. It goes from matter and turns into light. Goes from a proton to a photon. Now here's the interesting part of the story. What evolved on the planet Earth to capture the energy from the sun, which is all energy? You, me, plants, where you're sitting, the house you're in, everything is. The electric light came from photons, green leafy plants. That's what evolved here. And the very first animal didn't show up until 550 million years ago. That was a trilobite that looks like a horseshoe crab. And we didn't show up in this form till a few thousand years ago. Homo sapiens in this form. So what is the original life form, green leafy plants? What have we been giving, clinically observing with hundreds of thousands of people, green leafy plants? Their diseases go away. We fight aging. And by the way, finally, mainstream science is getting to this conclusion. So it's not brain science, it's common sense. And that's what sprouts give you. So in the middle of a snowstorm in Alaska in January, you can grow green leafy plants in the kitchen window in a snowstorm. And in Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, North Carolina, in the middle of summer, we can grow green leafy plants inside of our kitchen. So, I mean, the other wonderful thing, I've had the opportunity to work in countries around the world with the United Nations years ago in India and Egypt. I was in villages with starving people. They were giving them condensed milk and they were dying. Surplus butter, what did that do for the people? We were sprouting. We took 100-pound bags, this is biblical but factual, and produced 1,000 pounds of highly nutritious food that their bodies could digest and utilize. Complete proteins, complete vitamins, complete minerals, essential fats. And what we've discovered over the last 50 years, hope, hormones, oxygen, phytonutrients, and enzymes. That's the medicine in these raw plants. And once you cook them, finito, gone.
But you juice them. Okay, so I've been juicing for many, many years. I grew up preferring brownies over broccoli, I'm just going to say.
Of course.
And realized that that was not helping my body and needed to really be aggressive with changing my palate. And so I used juicing as a way to change my palate. However,
That was smart.
I have not ever juiced a sprout.
Oh, that's got to be your new thing.
That's got to change, right? I sprout and I eat sprouts, but I've never juiced a sprout. So I want to know about that. Like, what happens when you juice a sprout?
This is so cool. When you were here, I saw you drink a green juice.
Yeah.
And so that one green juice you had the protein the average American absorbs in 3 days. So the two most obvious things we see here are overeaters or satiated, so they're not hungry, and blood sugar conditions where we have the numbers to prove it. They're getting well so quick with type 2 diabetes and hypoglycemia, your head spins. We've got to watch if they're taking insulin, they don't go into shock. And so that our medical team has to be on top of that. And the fact of the matter is, when you can have that much nutrition, now remember, when you take a seed, it's nourishing, an organic seed. But when you germinate it, it's 8 times more on average nutrients. 8 times more A, B, C, D, E. 8 times more. That digestibility radically goes up. As I'm as healthy like you are as can be. But when we chew seeds and nuts, we don't chew them well enough and we don't digest them. When you germinate them, they become 17 to 57 times, not percent, more digestible. So you start juicing that stuff, sister, before you know it, you'll be flying.
Okay, I hope my husband's listened to this podcast because he is my juicer. He keeps me fortified with juice on a daily basis, and I so appreciate that. And so unfortunately, I get up at 5 a.m., and 2 days ago, he's just waking up at 6:30, and I'm in his ear about juicing sprouts.
Well,
He's like, what are you talking about? What are you reading? Like, help me understand. I'm trying to wake up. And I'm like, but we've got to be juicing sprouts. We need the protein.
Well, most women are going to envy you. They can't even get their husbands to say sprout or vegetable. And your husband's up at 5 in the morning juicing for you? 6 in the morning. God bless. He must really love you, honey.
He's a keeper. He's absolutely 100% a keeper, for sure.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So tell us the difference between microgreens and sprouting.
Okay, so we differentiate that in a simple way. So what you can grow in a jar, it's so easy. It's like you can put alfalfa seeds and clover seeds and radish seed. And if you were a farmer, you throw them on the field and hope for rain or sprinkle them. That's all you need to do in a jar. Now, others need roots to get larger, stronger, and have more nutrient density to it. So a sunflower, which grows so rapidly, now this is an amazing story. You put a little black seed in the ground, in 7 weeks, it's 15 feet tall, has hundreds and thousands, not hundreds, about 2,000 to 3,000 of seeds, and it moves. In the morning, it's facing the east, and at night, it faces the west. So you want to put that on soil. So microgreen is that. All of the seeds, any seed can be made in the microgreen so that it has roots. And of course, the soil you would choose is organic soil. Sure, you can buy that in a container, but it's sterilized. Better to go out to the woods near your house with a shovel and a big bucket, 50-gallon garbage bin, and put it in there. And then you recycle it when you're done with the mats, because once you cut the things, these put together mats, throw them, like here where we live in the South. You throw them in your backyard, in 6 weeks you have richer and richer and richer soil. Here in the morning, back at our gardens, in our compost pile, every single animal from South Florida is here, knowing this is the best diner in the whole state.
Yeah, we just talked about composting a few podcasts back, Kelly, didn't we?
We
about
did.
The importance of composting. Yeah, definitely.
If you haven't had him on, you've got to have Dr. Zach Bush on. He just did the foreword. This guy is amazing. He's a medical doctor that left, recognizing if we don't work with farmers and get the soil back, we're all gone.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So I want to understand, when people begin to change their diet, obviously their GI tracts, in many cases, they're not used to it.
Yes.
So, Kelly talked about changing her palate with juicing, but I want to hear, what are the things that you guys see on property when you begin making those changes with adding more vegetables?
So we were the people that sort of popularized the term detoxification. And boy, you are. A better word for it now, 53 years later, is exorcism. I mean, when you've been sinning, and I was a sinner, you were a sinner too. I mean, you've got to be exhumed. And I mean, all of that stuff you've been eating over decades literally is stuck in your intestinal tract, the ventricles of your body. It's created plaque. Your cardiovascular system is clogged with this stuff, comes out. Now, the good news is Dr. Arthur out in San Diego did a study. It ended up costing her $2 million over time. She found out in the first 7 days, most of us eliminate about 60% of the waste in our body. That's why you feel like you're hit by a truck getting on this pristine, clean diet. So people are moaning and groaning and saying, this isn't working because I feel sick. It is working. You got to clean the pathway so now the organs start functioning the way they should. Now the second week, people start to say, wow, I feel a lot better. By the third, they get it. And it's 21 days to change habits, to change mindsets. And we've learned through our medical team here, the biochemistry of the body radically shifts by 50% between the 14th day and the 21st day. So a lot comes out, but the real work is done 14 to 21 days, 2 weeks to 3 weeks. And so you can go through that, but it's a needed process. And if you're a wussy or a sissy, you're not going to like it. But if you want to be forgiven for your sin, nature will do it.
It sure will. It sure will. You are so right. And I think there's a lot of mental shifts that have to happen during that time too, that I can imagine that you really have to support your guests with, to let them know, listen, you're not going to feel great. This doesn't feel good. But honestly, your body wasn't doing well before. This is a part of the healing process that you have to walk through. Yeah. So
if you put a cork in a cesspool, you don't know there's a cesspool. So when you pull the cork, all of that waste has to go. And our doctors support them, but more so, everyone gets psychotherapy here with gifted psychotherapists. Because it's when I joke, but I didn't really mean it as a joke, even though it sounds funny, you are going through an emotional and spiritual exorcism. Because cellular memory is not a new age philosophy, it's a biological fact. And so you're holding on pain and suffering, unresolved issues, and a lot of that eating. When I was obese, even though I had a great life and was loved, I didn't like myself much. So I was not taking drugs, I wasn't an alcoholic, but I did it with food. And most of us use food as a weapon against ourselves because we're not willing to deal with change. And that's what we do here. As you know, the base program is called the Life Transformation. We have comprehensive cancer and mindfulness program, immune boosting program, fitness program. Next year, we're going to have a longevity program. My book will be out the end of this year called How to Live to 120. Not because we think so, we know you can do that. And so I'm doing that with a doctor whose wife came here 20 years ago and reversed stage 4 melanoma. which in modern medicine is incurable. You know how many people I've worked with that did that? And the good news is you just have to support nature. We don't have to do the work. Nature lets it happen. And so those of you listening out there that this sounds so new and maybe even frightening to you, you know, a lot of you say you have faith, but you don't really have faith. A lot of you say you want to live naturally, but you're really not living naturally. You've got to let go. You've got to just embrace. If you believe that there's a creator and there's a universe, you've got to really now engage in that and let go of all of our preconceived notion. And before you know it, you're going to heal and you're going to become a human being like you've never been before.
Achieving your best, yes, reaching your optimal health. And you're right, it really is a grieving process of sorts, don't you think? People go through denial and they, anger and likely resentment, and they're moving towards the acceptance of these are the things I need to do to achieve the life I want to have. And you either decide to do it or you decide not to do it. But the ball is in everyone's court individually to do that. You give them, as I understand it, the tools and the resources. You don't treat them. You give them the tools and resources to heal themselves, as I understand it.
Yeah, everything we're mono-focused. We have several departments, energy medicine department, as you know, our partners, which you're involved with, boost the immune system with IVs. Our psychotherapy department, we have a kitchen, we have nutritional department, but it's all about boosting the immune system. Because at the end of the day, the universe figured this out. The immune system is, and you know this, but the listener may not, is a gathering of brilliant cells. And those cells, each and every one of them have a unique job. Some go after bacteria, some viruses, some mold, some yeast, some fungus, some parasites, some amoebas, and some cancer. And when you can encourage the immune system to do the job that nature and the universe meant it to do, there's nothing you cannot reverse. Some of the people I've had the privilege to work with over the half century or more that I've been doing this have been written off. Multiple sclerosis, early stage Parkinson's disease, every form of cancer you can imagine. And every one of these people, by the way, have the capacity to heal themselves if they have the self-respect, the self-love, and the correct tools to do it.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed you just got a delivery of juice, if I'm not...
Yes, I'm drinking.
So you better drink it, because I understand that it oxidizes in how many minutes or seconds?
15 minutes.
There you go.
Just made now. This
Cheers.
is about half sprouts, sunflower sprouts, pea sprouts, complete proteins, and the rest cucumbers, organic of course, cucumbers, celery, parsley, these type of things. And I'm going to tell you, that is where you remember the word photosynthesis, where all energy comes from.
Yes. Yeah, it's making me thirsty to see it. Yes, cheers to you. Drink up.
Yes.
Eventually we'll have something we can sip through the internet.
Right. We'll get there.
Absolutely, yes.
So what's coming up for Hippocrates? Are there any events that we should know about? Is there anything that you want to highlight for our listener?
Well, surely. I mean, my newest book just came out. You can get it on Amazon. It's called Self-Healing Diet.
Okay.
And it not only talks about what we've talked about, nutrition. This is one that is weight regulation, under and overweight. But for instance, one of the studies in there showed that people who are chronically using cell phone, which is 67% of us that do, by the way, 67% of the people have an addiction to cell phone use, weigh 30% more than the rest of the population. Now we know because of microtoxins, including plastics, another study came out yesterday, that this is something that contributes to weight gain and in some kinds emaciation with it, and cancers, obviously. There was a study done at Oxford not long ago. The top oceanographic scientist said, if you consumed only 3 fish meals a week, I used to do 3 in a day, at the end of a year, 365 days, you have 2 ounces of plastic in your organ systems. Now, you and I know as physicians that kills people. And forget just the cancer, how about neurological problems in that too? So we're in a world of septic poison at this point. No government anywhere in the world, including the United States, is serious about changing it. And corporations control governments and people who run governments and your life. And we've got to just divorce ourselves from that poison and live as clean and as pure, both mentally and physically as we can. And you will see the reality, what humans were meant to be. Because we are good people. We're not killers, we're not fighters, we're not racist and sexist. We are people who want to love and be loved. But you've got to have a clean, pure lifestyle to do that. You've got to have the integrity. So when you go to bed at night, you know you've done your best. We're not perfect. There's no such thing as perfection. But the fact is, that is what creates your human spirit.
Mm-hmm. True that. That is.
I also want to ask the question about modalities too. You guys offer quite a few modalities too, between cold water plunges. You have energy work. What are some of the other modalities that Hippocrates offers to pair alongside of the food side?
Well, about 29 years ago, one of my close friends, he's an American that went to Germany and helped them create magnetic resonant imagery decades ago. He let me know that hyperthermia killed microbes and cancers. And from the day after he said this to me, he had 5 expertise as an MD. I've been doing, and my wife's been doing, an infrared sauna, and when I travel, often not an infrared, every day. This is not a joke. I just got back from a European lecture tour. If they didn't have a place I could go to the sauna, I say no. That's how important it is. This is what takes out the micropoisons, the microtoxins, the plastics we're talking about. We also have steam baths. Everyone gets body work, but it's not rubby-dubby feel-good stuff. It's neuromuscular sometimes. It doesn't feel good, but boy, does it do a lot of work. We have acupuncture here at Hippocrates. But these are common things. I think the most important thing is we use psychoneuroimmunology that deals on a brain level with your immune system and your neurological system. And we also now know in the last 12 months to 14 months that your body was built, Homo sapiens, to consume raw green plant foods. Because you have 3 literal families of bacteria that are the pillars of 80% of your immune system and 90% of your brain function. So when people have psychological disorders or biological disorders, it's that these 3 families of bacteria in your gut are not functioning. One is called Provotella, one is called Bacteroid, and the other is called Rheumacoccus. We now know that they are fed by raw green plant-based food. And what did I used to eat? Chicken, God knows what, ice cream every day practically, butter. And what that was doing is provoking bad bacteria, so my brain and my immune system didn't work. So we can no longer hide behind philosophy, theology, or whatever we want to make up in our own silly minds. We now have the science, we have the data, and we've been clinically proving that here. When you can reverse stage 4 cancers and 20 years of multiple sclerosis, all I did here is type 2 diabetes. I quit it so easy. Cardiovascular, disease. It's not a disease. Only 3% is a mechanical. The rest is lifestyle created. All you have to do is get on the internet and look up the diseases and the amount of disease we had in the year 1900 and compare it to today when we're speaking. Some diseases didn't even exist. Cancer with 3% of the population, now it's over 50% of us will get it. Mm-hmm. 20 years ago, I'd be yelling at medical conferences about 12% of our children in North America being chronically ill. So let me explain to your listeners what that means. They're permanently sick. So 16-year-old children and below were permanently sick. And I was yelling, you know what the number is today? 57%. What is it going to look like? You know this, how sick we are. What's it going to look like in 25 or 30 years? Well,
it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart, honestly. Yeah. And that's, Brian, that's my story, having been diagnosed with diabetes type 2 at 25 and taking a hard look in the mirror at what I had to do differently. I was already a marathon runner and I didn't eat too many Snickers bars, recognizing that, yes, it is a lot of food, but it's also what's in our food, right? So we can be eating good stuff, but it could be not organic. So you're so right that these metabolic disorders and cancer and all of that, they're on the rise. And by taking a lifestyle approach, eating the right food for you and the right amount for you at the right time for you, getting quality things, things, putting people around you that love you and support you, and a mindset that I believe I can. If I think I can, I can. If I think I can't, I can't. Moving the body, all of those things are powerful medicine. I am so thankful just to have had the opportunity to not only meet you, but talk to you and have you definitely here on this podcast today and just kind of digging deeper into what you do. Thank you so much for being a pioneer, being out there.
Fun. A lot of fun. As you know, this is not work. The day it becomes work, I'll quit. That means I'm not good at it anymore. And I welcome all of the listeners out there to look us up, Hippocrates Wellness, and come down and visit us. This is a transformative experience that sadly out in the world with your friends and family, it's hard to do on your own. God bless both of you. Keep up your work. Good to be with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brian. Have a fantastic rest of your day.
You too now.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. You can find more information about Synergy at Synergy for Life. That's SYNERGEE, 4life.com.
And then Synergy Connect is our Facebook. And then please make sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app so that you make sure you get future notifications of episodes.
The purpose of our Synergy podcast is to educate. It does not constitute medical advice. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical condition in either yourself or others, including but not limited to patients that you are treating. Please consult your own physician for any medical issues you may be having.